pop-out chat going.
Hey everybody. Sorry. If you came here expecting porn, there's not any. So, you should leave. Anyways, how's it going, guys? I'm here with LuciferMeansLightbringer.
Hello.
Yeah. So, you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Lucifer, and then I'll get into our topic.
All right. Well, I'm LML, Lucifer Means Lightbringer, and I've got some videos about symbolism and moon meteors and Lightbringer and all kinds of things like that. And I think most people are vaguely familiar, so I won't bore everyone to death with a long intro. But if you want to see what I'm about, you can go over to LuciferMeansLightbringer.com and find all my stuff there. So let's get going.
Absolutely. So this is kind of going to be like a heavy podcast. I did my video earlier this morning about the power of belief, and I went into a lot of things that I felt like went over some people's heads. A lot of people didn't really grasp the concept of what I was trying to say. And there was one question in particular that I saw that I definitely wanted to respond to. So, let's look at it. Okay. Ariel Stulberg says, Thoros didn't believe and yet has power. You're kind of all over the place with this one. You're using the words power and belief in both in two different senses. What you're saying applies to political power and beliefs about political power influenced by propaganda. Though I think your sci-fi, and I don't know what I'm trying to say there. I think your polls sci-fi, your pol sci, and in real life history are very simplistic. Political realists like Taiwan are all about the idea that military and diplomatic facts on the ground are a fundamental thing to politics, but it does not apply to magical powers. Magical powers clearly doesn't reside where men believe it resides. And that's true, and I do make the distinction in this very video, so that's why I'm a little bit confused. I say there is power that it's based off of might, like the power of the other is magical power, and then there is power that's also more abstract, like the power that a king has. And then I actually even talked about a third form of power, which is, power on the power of belief on a metaphysical sense. How belief affects the magic in this world is one thing that I was talking about too. So yeah, I agree with you. I am talking about it in different senses. I'm not equating these things and saying that they're all the same. So yeah, I just had to respond to that comment. And
I think, if I may, I think he's addressing something that you said that sort of made it sounded like you were saying that you have to believe in order to work magic. And so he's sort of saying, well, Thoros was basically an unbeliever and the magic sort of happened unexpectedly. And so I don't think that you were proposing as a hard and fast rule that you have to believe in something to make it happen, simply that it can aid that to something for something to happen, something more like that, right?
yeah, and I think that and I think in Daenerys' case, it would not have been possible without the belief. Like the belief was the other ingredient that was required. I don't think it might not be always required. It's probably not, but I think in that case it was.
And the case of Thoros is pretty interesting. Just the idea that what he was doing when he gave the fiery kiss to Beric is basically it's a standard Relorist funeral rite that they've been doing for however long that Relorism has been around, which we have no idea. And it usually doesn't raise people from the dead, but for some reason it did. So there's basically a couple of it leads to asking the question of, well, why did it do that this time, right?
It
And
implies
it
that
obviously,
there's something
go
special
ahead.
about Thoros, I think, or maybe Beric Dondarrion. Maybe anybody could have said those words, but it just happened to be Thoros. Maybe Beric Dondarrion is the special one. You know?
It could be. I tend to think that my favorite ideas are either that it's has something to do with Westeros,
Mm-hmm.
like the interaction of fire magic and a continent threaded through with weirwood roots, or it could be the return of magic because of the comet and the dragons, and so fire magic is sort of just growing stronger, and that basically this last kiss was originally used way back in the day to resurrect people, and it essentially lost its power and became a ritual.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden the power comes back, and like the pyromancer's spells are working better, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden this old ritual does what it used to do, and it raised somebody from the dead. So
So it just
that's
goes back to that same thing, the comet and or the dragons, depending on which theory you believe in. But yeah, it goes back to that. This is the initial thing that reawoke, that brought this kind of force back into the world. So yeah, very interesting.
we had a fun little discussion in the chat about the original ice.
Uh
And Ion Trone said that Ned named his sword after Vanilla Ice.
huh.
Because I happen to think that Dawn is actually the original ice of House Stark. And
Mm.
that way back in the Age of Heroes, originally it was a King of Winter who held Dawn, the sword that we now call Dawn. The big white one that looks like a White Walker shin bone. Because the White Walkers have bones that look like milk glass,
Milk
just as
glass,
Dawn is
yeah.
pale as milk glass. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what, yeah. So Dawn looks like a White Walker femur. Yeah, I'm actually going to have a full theory coming out about that. Now I'll promo my podcast. Next, in probably about 3 or 4 days, I'll have a podcast out called Dawn of the Others, which will have my full theory about Dawn being the original ice. So look
Mm-hmm.
for that if you're interested in that topic. Hey, it's Gray Area.
What's up, Gray? So okay. So while we're on this subject, we can talk about power in the political sense a little bit more. See, okay, the way a government works is it's the people that give, these head figures power. If it wasn't for just the common people's belief in, the power of these structures, they'd have absolutely no power. They'd hold absolutely no fucking power. But it's the belief that a king has power and that you should fear the king and that you should, fear the guards or fear the cops or whatever. That's all an abstract form of power. Yes, they do have, once the systems have been in place for a while, they do have, physical strength. They have, the armor and the weapons. But again, this entire structure is being held together by the belief. You've got one commanding officer above another commanding officer, and the fact that he accepts the fact that this is my commanding officer is what makes him listen to him, what makes him do what he does. And so, populations can become infected with ideas, infected with beliefs. And what smart governments do, I'm not saying necessarily good governments, but what smart governments usually do is they attempt to curb the belief of the populace, and it's usually through propaganda, because controlling that belief is a very powerful tool. And social engineering has been used since the dawn of civilization, and is still being used today. And it's being used in Westeros as well. That's what Cersei's doing serious damage control in A Feast for Crows, trying to make people. It would be good if they tried to make people not think so poorly on House Lannister. If they could say that Stannis is lying, or they always have to have a public statement because they're trying to kind of curve it. But once the population is already infected with this idea that Joffrey is a bastard and that Cersei is banging her brother, it's difficult to remove, and it's a very delicate balancing game that you're playing with. And that's just an example of how power in the political sense is mostly abstract. And I hope everyone follows me. You following me, Lucifer?
Yep.
Okay.
I
Cool.
had a thought to sort of build on top of that. You're talking about the nature of power structure.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why people choose to believe in a king is because it's kind of an extension of the idea of a father, and the whole idea of patriarchy and monotheism and patriarchal government and monarchy. They're all sort of, they come from the same idea, because the idea of having one God that's like a father God is basically an extension of, you know, you as a child having a father. The idea of having parents is that they're a protection over you. There's somebody that's bigger than you that's worrying about the big problems so you don't have to. And that's one reason why a lot of people like to believe in God and find, you know, tend to believe in God, is because it's comforting. It's comforting to think that there's an intelligent, powerful being who is benevolent on some level, that's looking out for you. And so we translate that idea into our power structures, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, not every single person that's working in a field or in a factory or at a computer desk can be worried about foreign policy. You know, like, we need a Secretary of State. We need a power structure of some kind. And when you have the older forms that are closer to feudalism and monarchy, it's all isolated into this one person, the king,
Mm-hmm.
or his little small ruling council, or whoever's pulling the strings of a given king.
Mm-hmm.
And so people choose to believe and give that power to the king because it's a way of organizing society. And that's what they talk about, the feudal contract. It's like, as long as the king does good enough managing things, then everybody's okay with it. But like you said, that can turn in an instant. And if the king is not perceived as being strong or doing a good job or having control of things, people lose faith. And all of a sudden, he's just a dude in a chair and not the king. He's just a
Yeah.
dude in a chair. And everyone looks at him like, why should we listen to you? And all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden, he doesn't have power. That can happen in the blink of an eye.
Absolutely. And see, the thing is, like populations, like big populaces, they're drawn to, simplistic thinking. They want to believe in, like one thing. And and when you have someone that's enlightened, and this kind of goes back to the allegory of the cave, when you have someone that's enlightened and they're like informing the populace, they often reject the enlightenment. They don't want to hear it. Because, okay, so if we're going to talk about the allegory of the cave, I'll just explain it real quick. So you have people that are in a cave. They're chained up, staring at a wall of the cave. They can't turn their head, and they were here since birth. They've been locked up in here, and they see shadows on the wall. They see shadows of people passing by. They see shadows of like animals, and they hear the sounds. But their interpretation of reality is those shadows. So they give the shadows names. Like, this is their world. This is all that is real to them. They don't understand that these shadows are just phantoms. They don't understand that these shadows aren't the full representation of what they're seeing. And so eventually one day one guy escapes the cave, right? And he goes out. And first the world is weird
Well,
to
hold on,
him.
hold on, hold on. No, you're skipping one step.
Okay, what am I
So,
skipping?
okay, so all these people are chained up so that they can only stare at the wall, and they see the shadows on the wall. The shadows are coming from a campfire, essentially a bonfire that's behind them that they can't see. And there's people that are not chained, and these people are actually using little models of trees and animals and people to make shadow puppets, essentially, on the wall. And that's what the prisoners can see, is only these shadow puppets. But when when the first guy escapes his chains and turns around for the first time, before he goes outside, he sees this fire. And he sees not the people, but he sees the little models that they were using to make the shadow puppets. And so he picks up a little model of a tree and looks at it. And eventually he connects the tree to the shadow of the tree that he's been seeing. And so now his idea of a tree is a little closer to a real tree, because he can see a three-dimensional model, not just a shadow. And then he goes outside and sees the actual tree. So go ahead.
Okay, so he escapes. He sees the world for what it really is. There might be different versions or interpretations of the story, because the one that I was reading was like they were literally, the one that I was just reading, like right before I started the stream, is that they were literally just chained in the cave, and they were, and the shadows that they were seeing were the people outside of the cave just moving around. So they'd see like the
Okay,
shadow
that's
of
a
a
little bit of
dog
a
and
that's a
the
little bit of a simplified version, I guess.
okay, perhaps because yeah, I was just like looking at it
But
just
so do you
really
have the
quickly.
quote? Do you have the Varys quote about power being a shadow on the wall ready to read, or should I pull that?
I know it's power resides where men believe it resides. It's a trick. And then Tyrion says a shadow on the wall, and then he says and a very small man can cast a very large shadow. That's essentially
Okay,
it.
right. So it's important to, because that quote is essentially George Martin pointing directly to this famous Plato allegory.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he's essentially saying in that quote is like, well, if you think, a shadow on the wall, it's not real, but if you think it's real, then it is.
Uh-huh.
That's essentially the idea. And in this Plato allegory, the people who can't see anything else except for the shadows, that's all of reality for them. And that's what they understand as being real, even though there's other higher layers that you can perceive. And so that's essentially the nut of what you were talking about in your video today is the whole idea of belief. Like if people think that something is powerful, then it is. And
Yes.
we can sort of talk about the whole power of fake news in today's society. Like fake news can be just as powerful as real news if it's weaponized, if it gets out to enough people, and if it's in the coming from a mouthpiece that people have put their trust into. It can do a lot of damage.
I'm gonna go on a tangent, but but I want to just say one more thing about the allegory of the cave. What I find really interesting is what happens when he goes back to the cave, and he tries to tell everyone in the cave about what he's seen. They completely reject it. And they become violent because
they don't have a framework to even understand what he's talking about.
yeah. And you're challenging these people's perception. And it reminds me of that Star Trek The Next Generation episode where they have these people on this planet. Their planet is dying. They have to transport them. They put these people in an exact copy of where they live, but it's in the holodeck. And one guy wanders out of the holodeck and he's like, bam, my entire fucking world is just fucking rocked. I'm on a fucking spaceship with these people. He can't fucking understand this shit. He has no idea what's going on. So his idea of reality is totally rocked. And it was definitely referencing it because they were in a cave, and then he chooses not to go back because he says that if he can't keep it from the people in the cave. And he also couldn't go back because he'd be so changed, so different, knowing that the world wasn't real. And the guy decides to kill himself, and that's how it ends a little bit more dark. Well, the allegory is dark too, but it's pretty dark in Star Trek. But that's what it reminded me of. Yeah, like so when people can't handle it. Very few people can handle just like being hit in the face with true enlightenment, without reacting in a way. You shake someone's entire belief structure, and nine times out of 10, they're going to react negatively. You tell someone that the entire structure of what they believe is just completely wrong, most people aren't going to just be like, oh, that's fine, and just move along and immediately accept what you tell them.
And so essentially what we're talking about is the difference between truth and popular belief. Like this guy comes back into the cave, he has the truth, and he's trying to give the truth to those other people in the cave. But since they don't accept it, they in some version, in Plato's original version, they essentially kill him. Mm-hmm. Because he sounds like a lunatic to them, and he's disturbing them, and eventually they turn on him and kill him. And so it's like if you can't make people believe something, then it doesn't do you any good. And I honestly, I was raised in a Christian home, and I've sort of changed my philosophy, sort of come back around. I became anti-Christian, and now I sort of appreciate all religions equally, I would say. But the point is, like, when in a Christian context, what you're supposed to be doing is spreading the word of God. You're supposed to be turning people on to the Bible and to the message of the Bible. And so we would always think about, well, if there's a Bible verse that says, if I have truth but not love, then I'm like a clanging gong or ringing cymbal that nobody wants to hear, essentially. And so the meaning of the verse is like, you might know the truth, but if you can't be a good person, if you can't show love to people, it doesn't matter, and you won't win anybody over to your way of thinking. And so it all comes back down to belief. Like whatever people believe is what's powerful. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of the relationship between truth and belief is a very interesting one, and that's where a lot of power comes from, right?
Absolutely. And once you have someone that can manipulate those beliefs, that's someone that has a lot of power. That's why the church had so much power and still has a lot of power. That's why, because like they were able to just say, like, because you know, you have the regular people, they can't read Latin, Bible's in Latin. Of course, the Catholic Church has all the fucking power. They tell you what to believe, and you just accept it. And you know, it's crazy because they would sell, I forget what they were called, but they'd sell like tickets to heaven, basically. Like you wear this necklace, and these people believe that this thing is going to take them to heaven, like this necklace. So you can sin as much as you want. As long as you got this, you're fine. And it's just ridiculous. But it's like, that's the way it works. Manipulation of belief is extremely powerful. All right. So I think,
Let's use to bring it back to A Song of Ice and Fire. There's all kinds of examples of this. Like,
yeah,
for example, let's take Littlefinger. I mean, Littlefinger's entire game is to manipulate what people will believe so that they'll act in certain ways. Like that's his whole game. Like with sending the letter and plotting Jon Arryn's death and framing the Lannisters, framing Tyrion with the knife. No, just real quick, I am not a Mormon. I was raised Christian, and now I consider myself something of an agnostic. Yes, there we go.
hmm
But to get back to what I was saying, so yeah, I mean, Littlefinger understands that really well. Like whatever people believe is effectively what happened. There's been some interesting videos lately about the whole idea of Littlefinger potentially spreading the idea that Rhaegar kidnapped and raped Lyanna when that wasn't actually true. Like maybe he spread that to Robert so that Robert would, take the actions that he took.
yeah, and you have to wonder how accurate are our histories really. Remember what Cersei says to Joffrey: "You'll be king, and the truth will be what you make it." And it's often said that history is written by the victors. So how accurate is our accounts of history really? What is the truth versus what most people believe? You know.
Yeah, and Martin has a lot of fun with that. I mean, what I love is how well he just has a lot of fun with history and myth. It's like he writes it to intentionally be partly true and partly distorted. Every single old story that we have has some truth in it, but at the same time, it's also they're all not none of them are totally true. And so there's this. He creates this guessing game where you're trying to figure out where the kernels of truth are and how it. Like for example, the theory that I love is, or the myth that I love is the one about the moon wandering too close to the sun and cracking open and pouring forth dragons. Well, that sounds totally wacky until you realize that those dragons are really a description of meteors. And now it begins to make sense. You're like, oh, okay, some sort of moon cracking celestial catastrophe thing happened, and then we got meteors, and that makes sense. But you have to translate a little bit because it's a myth and it's stylized and it's got symbolism in it and it's been thousands of years and so on and so forth.
Okay. So I talked in that video earlier today about King's Blood as well. And some of the responses that I got were that King's Blood had something to do with Garth the Green Hand. Well, then, I'd asked about Khal Drogo. The way I think King's Blood works is, I think not only is that belief that he is a king, powerful in that abstract sense, it's also in this universe powerful on a more metaphysical sense. I think that the fact that all these people basically worship this guy and look to him as a leader makes his blood powerful on some metaphysical level. And that's what I was getting at when I said there was power in King's Blood that way. Because I think that if it was really a Garth Green Hand thing, it would be limited. And then, why is it just kings that have his blood? Why can't you just find like some average Joe? Like if he really had so many children, that means that a significant portion of the people in Westeros would have his blood. So if it's his blood that's important, then King's Blood really doesn't matter at all. And that's what I was getting at. I think it's the belief in that seeps into it on a metaphysical plane, on a metaphysical level.
Yeah, there's some pretty wacky, like woo-woo ideas about, what about essentially things being possible if everyone believes them.
Hmm.
But that's kind of a jumping off point. Hey, so my one of my best patrons, Monica Lamos, grabbed a quote from Euron Greyjoy, which seems to be another reference to the Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And that quote was, "In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king." And so it's
Oh,
kind of, again, talking about that whole limited perception idea. Like, if everybody can only see the shadows on the wall, then whoever can manipulate those shadows is king. The
yeah.
person who has a higher perception can manipulate the people who have a lower perception.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna do what I always do, and I'm gonna talk about Dune for a second, because the God Emperor Leto has the
Oh, way to
most.
go, Monica. You
He's
got him
got.
talking about Dune. Nice.
He has the most profound vision. He can see further into the future than Paul could, than anyone before him, and he also has this profound understanding of humankind. So he has an awareness like no other. Billions of people live inside of his mind, and he can see further than anybody can. So he has an understanding of, the universe that's far superior to anyone else. So that's how he's able to maintain his power, and that's also why no one can really understand him. They can't really understand what he's doing because he sees so far in advance that our little minds that only exist in the case of Dune for 200 or 300 years. So they're living in like a 200-year lifespan. He's got thousands of years and millions of years into the future that he's already seen. So yeah, that's how he's able to keep, maintain his power through that. And he also does, the manipulation of belief. They've got this false idea that everything's, peaceful, because they don't see them being attacked by, like the Talaxians or like the assassination attempts on the God Emperor's life. They're not seeing that because he's manipulating their belief. But yeah, I just had to go on a little Dune tangent. You can look forward to those videos coming out soon too.
Hey, you have to keep in mind that you've made Dune sound so cool that now you've actually convinced people to go back and read it. So you actually need to be careful about spoiling the series at this point.
That's probably true. But then, like as a friend of mine, Comic Book Girl 19 always says, like Dune is a reality to be experienced. It's not something that you can spoil. You just got to go in and experience the journey. But yeah, yeah. But I'll be careful about that from now on though, because I don't want to spoil any of the really cool shit.
Scott McLeese says, "I wonder if the Dune live stream prattles on about the Song of Ice and Fire."
If I'm doing it, probably.
And yes, gray area. I believe she says, "Would you compare him to Bran?" I think she's asking about the God Emperor you were just talking
Absolutely.
about.
Absolutely,
So, yes.
and I have multiple times. He is definitely Bran. Bran is him. Like I think Bran is based off of Leto and Paul Atreides. He's based off of both of those characters in Dune. So yeah, absolutely. So the other side of this live stream, the other topic that we were going to discuss, is magic versus science. You know, we've like touched on this a couple times in live streams before, but we've never like went into like super uber detail about it. But like I everyone pretty much knows what I think. I am solid that A Song of Ice and Fire is magic. It's not sci-fi. I don't think that the power comes from telepathy or any of that. I don't agree, and the reasons that I don't agree is one, George R. R. Martin flat out says it's magic, and two, for something to be considered sci-fi, it has to at least have some basis in science. And A Song of Ice and Fire has absolutely none. That is the only criteria for sci-fi. It has to have a basis in science. And you have A Song of Ice and Fire, which is being told from it's being told from a fantasy lens. So that's what it is. You can't. And if you're just gonna tell me that it's telepathy with no explanation behind it, then it's essentially magic. That's what it is. If you're just saying it's mystical telepathy, it's magic. It's magic. There's no distinction to be made there. So, yeah, and that's
Yeah, I mean, if it's not a scientifically observable and rational phenomenon, then it has to be considered magic,
Mhm.
essentially, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, I mean, you can quibble about it, but that's what people think of when they think of science fiction. Like in science fiction stories, they still do things that aren't quite possible yet, but they're based upon a logical framework and the idea that is in the future, this will be plausibly scientifically possible. However, when you talk about telepathy, that's basically magic. Now, before we get any further into this discussion, I feel like we have to start by reading the words of George R. Martin.
Yes.
And so this is in an interview, and he's talking about rules in magic systems. So he says, fantasy needs magic in it, but I try to control the magic very strictly. You can have too much magic in fantasy very easily, and then it overwhelms everything, and you lose all sense of realism. I try to keep the magic magical, something mysterious and dark and dangerous, and something never completely understood. I don't want to go down the route of having magic schools and classes where, if you say these 6 words, something will reliably happen. Magic doesn't work that way. Magic is playing with forces you don't completely understand, and perhaps with beings or deities you don't completely understand. It should have a sense of peril about it. And then the interviewer says, so no Hogwarts? And he says, no.
All right.
Okay. And then another one, a related statement, he says, there is magic in my universe, but it's pretty low magic compared to other fantasies. So you get the idea.
There
like
is magic. That's what he's
there is
straight
magic.
up saying. Yeah. And a perfect example of the difference between sci-fi and fantasy. And I'm going to go back to Dune. Because, okay, so right now, at this very moment, today, there are people that can manipulate, chemicals in their body and change, the chemical concentrations in their body. They can alter that type of stuff. Through meditation, there are people that can do it. So Dune, the reason that it's sci-fi is because it takes that idea and you have people that through selective breeding and honing of these specific traits and intense training have honed it to a level where they can, alter poisons in their body, which may or may not be possible. But see, the thing is, it's based on, the initial scientific idea. That's what makes it sci-fi. And, fantasy would be you pick up a wand and you wave it and something happens. That's it has no basis in anything real. It's just, and that is the key difference that I feel like everyone is missing when you claim that A Song of Ice and Fire is sci-fi. It just does not work.
So let's address a point that a couple people have raised, and I've heard Preston raise this too, that the magic in A Song of Ice and Fire, it has rules or it has logic, something like that. So I do think there's some truth to that. Like we just read this quote, and he's saying he doesn't like magic systems, he doesn't like formulas, he doesn't like spells that work consistently. He wants it to be mysterious. At the same time, he does have these principles, right? Like only death can pay for life. It's like a principle.
Wait, stop.
Or
talk. Say something. Say something now.
Can you? Oh my!
Your
Was
audio.
that crapping out on?
Yeah, it's like freaking out right now.
Oh.
It sounds very robotic. It's like I can hear what you're saying, but it's like there's some.
Shall I call you back, or you want to call me back?
Yeah, like I'll call you back.
Okay.
Take 2 seconds. Hello. Hello. Is it me you're looking for? Trying to get LML back. His audio was kind of messing up. We're trying to figure out what the problem was, so we can get right back on track. I will give him a call. You there, buddy? We're in the call together, but his audio is not working right now. Let's see. We're trying to get this fixed. Just give us a moment. Can you hear me?
Ah, there you are.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's still doing that thing. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay. Well, just say a sentence. Say a cool sentence.
Deep in the heart of Relay, Cthulhu lies dreaming.
Yeah, maybe I should close Discord and open it up again. Let's do that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do the same.
Dang computer programs, guys. I really like that version of the Reigns of Castamere that plays at the end of that one episode with the guy with a really deep voice. The one that's like, "And who are you? The proud lord said that I must bow so low." Like that guy has an amazing freaking voice. So let's try this again. Let's try this again. Okay, I'm giving LML a call and seeing what happens. It's telling me that my voice is connected.
Okay, how about me? Do I sound good now?
Huh. No.
No?
Jesus freaking Christ.
I thought Discord was supposed to be good. Should we try Skype?
Yeah, let's try Skype. We gotta get this going. Yeah.
Give me a hot second. I might need to update my Skype on this computer real quick.
Okay.
Why don't you keep talking to the people?
I'll keep talking to them.
All right.
So we're having some technology problems. Anyways, we can continue. We'll get LML back on in just a second. But yeah, while we're at it, I'll just take some chat questions. So if you guys are in the chat and you want to throw a question at me, I'm looking at the chat now. That's crazy. This has been an enlightening discussion. We have learned LML is an agnostic cyborg with technical difficulties. Well, sometimes you're an agnostic cyborg. I mean, it's just, you shouldn't judge people for being agnostic cyborgs. You should do videos on Dune. Like theories and shit. Me, I'm sure the majority of your audience has started reading them. Well, that's good. I'm just glad everyone's prepared. My Skype has to update too, just like LML's does. But yeah, I'm glad I'm preparing everyone for Dune, because Dune's gonna be a journey. Dune is gonna be a journey. Not strictly sci-fi, but he does take the philosophy of science into account. I mean, George R. Martin takes the philosophy of science into account to an extent. But I don't think it's like highly emphasized. I think the series is mostly grounded in reality, but there are magical elements that completely forego any, scientific understanding. Where do you think power resides now? With who? With many. It resides with many. And that is the only answer. Do White Walkers have a civilization? I'm sure they do. I'm sure they have a society. I don't know if civilization is the right word, but society, definitely. Definitely think they do. The voice gun, Brandon Parker, the voice gun is just in the movie. That is not the deal with the weirding way. That is not what it is. The voice gun was something, I guess, that was easier to explain than, what happens in the book. So, yeah. No voice gun. I'm sorry. So I'm going to call LML back, and we're going to see what happens. I'm going to see if we got some good sound going on. Hello.
Hey, man.
Skype came through, it looks like. Because I can hear you.
Yeah, hold on a second. It's, I need to use my audio equipment. Okay, say something?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, now you're in my headphones. All right. Am I clear? Is the internet?
Actually, if I'm being honest, it's doing kind of a similar thing. It's like I think the overall quality here is like less, and then it's kind of clipping a little bit, but not as much. Say a sentence again.
Is my voice like too hot? Is it too loud?
No, it's just like it sounds muffled, and there's like clipping, like you can tell there's a very like internet kind of robotic sound at the end of your words.
It sucks. I'm hardwired into my modem. I'm not using Wi-Fi.
Okay, I think this is actually tolerable. Like, yeah, I think it should be fine. Because it sounds better than it did on Discord. So yeah, and I think the audience can hear you fine. Just say a paragraph or something, and then we'll let them judge.
Okay. Well, we were talking about. I sound far away. I'm ready. Let me turn up a little bit, I guess. So we were talking about, um, man. Sorry, I'm just reading all the comments. Okay, so talking about what were we talking about?
We were talking
Oh,
about
the idea of
science.
magic having right. So the idea that the magic has some rules or consistency, and I was saying, only death can pay for life, and we've seen that blood is pretty consistently a source of magical power.
Hmm.
Um, so there are some sort of principles, but I think we could tell from the quote that we read a few minutes ago that George Martin doesn't want the magic to be thought of as consistent
Yeah.
or predictable. So those principles are only loose principles. I wouldn't really call them rules. But
Yeah.
now I have a nice microphone and I've got a good connection. I don't know what the problem is, really, to be honest.
It could be my computer, but right now it's totally tolerable. But
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I agree. George R. R. Martin, um, yeah, I agree with what you said. He doesn't want the magic to really be explained, and it's kind of like it works sometimes. Like you do this, and it increases your chances of this working, but there's no guarantee, and that's probably why Aegon the Fifth failed at Summerhall with what he was trying to do. Like maybe he had pieces of a ritual or something, or maybe he just did it and he didn't have all the
Right.
right ingredients in the right place at the right time, and it failed because it is unpredictable. And it seems like something that's dangerous. Even like when magic is done, it just seems dangerous. Like Miriam Azdur in that tent in the shadows dancing. It
Yeah,
seems.
yeah, you think it's another Beto reference because you have shadows
Hmm.
on the wall,
Oh yeah.
and if you stay out, you only see the shadows and you don't know what's going on. And the reality itself was a little bit too horrible to comprehend. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So another thing I'll say is that George's magic doesn't just do whatever. Like people don't just wave their hands and like shoot fire and throw laser beams out of their eyes and stuff. Like it seems to be rooted to the natural elements. Like we have water-based magic and fire-based magic and ice-based magic and a lot of blood magic. We have physical objects like dragon glass that seem to be able to hold magic power.
Hmm.
I would guess that the meteorite, like the one that Dawn made from, is in fact magical. The red comet's probably magical. So I think there's a way you can sort of see magic almost as like natural properties of Westeros. Like it's a
Yeah.
magical world, and so the magic is tied to the trees and the fire and the water and the various forces of nature. And magic seems to use those forces of nature as a conduit, or you can use nature as a conduit to tap into magic.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really interesting is that at the wall, which Melisandre calls the hinge of the world, even though she's a fire magic user and the wall's made of ice, it still amplifies her power. And so that shows, to use Monica's favorite word, mana. It's that fire and ice magic can still tap into the same mana or the same magical power.
Yeah. Hmm. And I think it's like, dang it, I forgot what I was gonna say. I had something to respond to you.
When I talk too long, sorry.
It's not your fault. Dang it, I forgot what it was. It was definitely relating to what you were saying.
Something about magic rooted in
Oh
natural
yeah, yeah, yeah.
properties and
I remember it now. So in the Chronicles of Narnia, there is what is called deep magic, and I always like the deep magic because it's like the idea that magic is just intrinsic to this place, and that's how I think it is in A Song of Ice and Fire too. I think that it's just this is what the world is. You do this, and it creates this reaction, and it just has this magical element. Because what you have to remember is that this is not Earth. This is not even this same universe. We don't know the laws by which this universe operates, and it's just yeah. So I like the idea that magic is rooted just within the nature of reality, and that's just what it is.
So, okay, so now Cameron Charles is saying magic is science. The characters don't fully understand it for a few people and the children of the forest. I mean, it depends on how you're using the word science. In the classic sense, no. Martin is that it's magic. It's not science that people don't understand, that they think it's magic, but it's actually technology. It's not technology. It's magic. Now, if you want to say, like, the magic is the science of Westeros in some sense, I mean, okay, but Martin is pretty much telling us that magic doesn't work on formulas. It's science works like you same thing, you get a predictable result. Martin is saying you can't say 6 words and get a predictable result. It doesn't work like that. So,
yeah, and I think that's the key difference. Science has predictable patterns, and magic does not, or at least the patterns aren't as predictable as they would be if they were science. Because you can like science, you can do the scientific method and you can figure stuff out. Magic, I think it's not like that. It's more metaphysical. It's something that, probably that doesn't exist in this world, but in the world of Ice and Fire, it's just a thing.
yeah, I mean, I'll just read this again. He says, I try to keep the magic magical, something mysterious, dark, and dangerous, and something never completely understood. I don't want to go down the route of having magic schools and classes where if you say these 6 words, something will reliably happen. Magic doesn't work that way. It's playing with forces you don't completely understand. I'm not being dogmatic. This is Martin's words. This is how he's thinking about magic in his story. So we got to go on that. That's what we got.
It's implying that this is something beyond human understanding. In science, there's nothing that we couldn't understand given the tools and well, at least we assume that there is nothing. Maybe there is something that we just can't grasp. But in this world, yeah, this is something that's beyond them. That's very, very, very beyond them. So yeah, definitely magic and not science. And like I said, you can't call it sci-fi. It's just not. It just does not fit the criteria. George R. Martin has written plenty of sci-fi. He knows how to write sci-fi. And then Lucifer said to me earlier that that a lot of his sci-fi has a lot of magic in it too. So it's like
a ton. It's more similar to like Star Wars, where you have the Force,
which is just
and,
magic.
Telekinesis and psychic connections and things, but in a roughly science fiction sort of backdrop.
Yeah, you look at something.
Which is cool. I mean, that's great.
You look at something like the Force and it's magic. I mean, if you discount like the midichlorians thing. But if you look at something like the Force, it's just fucking telekinesis and mind control. It's magic. There's no further explanation given. It's pure magic.
Yeah, and the whole idea of using the Force is that you have to quiet your rational mind and stop trying to calculate trajectory of the photons, and it's more of a Zen thing where you tune into the wavelength of the Force, and then the photons go right down the chute where they need to go.
Oh, Elwin Zurich said the Shadow Baby is an illusion. It only existed in Davos's eyes. That's an interesting idea, but then how do you explain Catelyn Stark and Brienne Tarth?
Killed somebody.
Because they clearly saw it too.
And so did the Ghost of Highheart.
Yeah. Wait, so did the Ghost of Highheart what?
The Ghost of Highheart saw the Shadow Baby.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Shadow with the burning heart. Okay, so the one thing that is almost scientific is Qyburn.
Mm-hmm.
It's really strange. I think Martin is just riffing on like
Frankenstein,
sort of like steampunk, Frankenstein, sort of pseudoscience, quackery or whatever. Like there isn't a real explanation for how he's raised Qyburn, but Qyburn isn't using like ice or fire magic when somebody's not looking. Like he's doing something different.
That kind of drifts into the territory of science fiction, kind of. A little bit,
right?
A little bit, but it's not just like straight up.
Like, I'll give you Qyburn, but you can't have my meteor. It's not a spaceship.
Yeah. Exactly. Because I've heard a lot of weird ideas, guys. Like people that think there are spaceships underground, and that there was like a nuclear war, and I don't. There's nothing that suggests any of this, and that's why I'm just like, Like a theory should be grounded in something that's something that's suggested or hinted at it, or the themes point this way. And I just feel like there's nothing in this universe that would suggest that it's a result of like a nuclear war or anything like that. Like there's like zero record whatsoever. I just find that really difficult to believe. Like even after thousands of years, I feel like there'd be some remnant of that within just the zeitgeist of society, but there isn't any whatsoever. And that's just what really turns me off of this idea. And that's one of the things that turns me off of this idea. Beyond what Martin has said and just the simple semantic reasons why it just can't be called sci-fi.
Well, and there's other authors that have done that, where you have something that appears to be a fantasy world that turns out to be science.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously Terry Brooks did that with Benera books, and George did that in Bitter Blooms too. Was it Bitter Blooms where there's a woman in a spaceship and she basically takes somebody into the spaceship and shows her all these images on a screen and makes her think it's magic and it's really just a spaceship.
Yeah.
So I mean, like that, there are stories that end that way, but that's not what a Song of Ice and Fire is going to do. Like it's not going to get to the heart of winter and find a spaceship.
If an epic like this was if it was gonna end that way, like a book series like this, there would be hints. There would be hints all over the place that this is really what's going on. But my problem is none of that exists. Like I don't feel like George R. Martin is a writer that's just gonna pull this. Because if that happened, it would be like it was coming out of nowhere. It really would. Like there's not a single hint. To me, like I feel like everything that people point out to me is like well, for lack of a better term, just bullshit. It's like just erroneous. Like people have said that like the caves underground were built by people surviving the nuclear war, and that's why there's all these references to caves and tunnels and stuff like that. And I'm just like, well, tunnels do just exist in the real world, and and so I'm just like, I've never heard a good argument that supports that idea. I really haven't.
And also, like, even in that Bitter Bloom story where we've got something that appeared to be magic revealed as science, there's also those magical sort of vampire creatures that come out of some sort of prototype for the others. They seem magical. Yeah, so.
Well, I might as well say now. Well, you go ahead. Say what you're gonna say.
No, I was just gonna say I'm not like an expert on. I've read like maybe like 4 or 5 of this old stories. I haven't like read all of them. But
yeah, same here. I just bought like a bunch of them, so I'm gonna get into those after like I've gotten this Dune thing over with, because like Dune is just kind of like it's like taking up all of my time and like all of my effort to try and make this series. And you guys should be getting the first video, which is gonna be the beginner's guide, ultimate guide. Part 1, 7 videos. Part 1. This video is going to be about 30 minutes long. It's going to introduce you to Dune and all the books, and it's going to give you like a good By the way, don't think you can watch the series and not be spoiled. Like I said, like it's an experience. So you'll watch the first video, and that'll just be like the introduction. And then if you want to continue to go with me to like book 1, book 2, then you can watch the videos that follow that. And I also want to say that if you're watching this video right now and you're enjoying this conversation about magic and science and the power of belief, give this video a like. Also, check out my Patreon. I'm putting new content on my Patreon every month, twice a month. So, and you can be like a $1 Patreon and you get all that exclusive content. There's way more than an hour of it up right now. And yeah. And, Dave, you can go ahead and chill some stuff if you want.
Well, as I said, I already mentioned, so my podcast is called Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire, and you can find that at LuciferMeansLightbringer.com or by going on YouTube and searching for Lucifer Means Lightbringer. And I'm starting a new series about the others just this past week. So that's called Moons of Ice and Fire. And we're going to be talking about one is the ice theory and all kinds of cool. I've been basically talking about dragons and flaming swords for 2 years. So now I'm pivoting to the others, and it's going to be pretty exciting. But so hey, I saw a couple remarks in the chat, and I think this is a good related topic: is the idea of gods in a Song of Ice and Fire. This question gets asked almost every time I do a question and answer stream. So why don't you give your take first on it?
On whether or not gods exist? I
Yeah, or how you think about that
okay,
general
well,
principle, like roar and the great other and all that crap.
okay. I don't think that these gods are real. I think this is just these ideas, these gods are just people trying to interpret things that they don't understand. I think that there may be forces in this world that, pretend to be gods or that people kind of interpret as gods, kind of like more abstract things, that kind of influence the mind. More of non-corporeal things, things that might not even, that to humans, like they're not even, it's like what's the word, like they're very beyond our understanding, and maybe even in a sense we're beyond their understanding, and they affect the people of Westeros on kind of a more subtle level. But as far as like real gods are like, ha ha ha, I'm God, I don't think they exist. So that's my idea.
Yeah, I also do not think there are gods beyond green seers. Like that's an actual entity that some people perceive as a god that we actually know it's an entity. It's the hive mind of all the dead green seers or whatever. But I don't think R'hllor or the Great Other or anybody else exists. In other fantasy stories, there are actual gods, and they talk to people, and they're definite entities. But I do not think that that is the case in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I tend to think what's happening is that Martin is actually mimicking classical mythology here, where people generally create gods to describe the forces of nature and the forces that govern their universe. One of my favorite examples is the Egyptian god of the Nile, Hapi, Hapi, Happy. And he basically, yeah, heard that later. So Happy, all the attributes of Happy are essentially everything you need to know to deal with the Nile River in Egypt. His characteristics mimic the flood season and the way that you appease him, guide you to, do the right things for your harvest and all that kind of thing. So when you have a storm god, the storm god is vengeful and wrathful, and it's supposed to teach you sort of respect the sea. Like the sailors believe in a storm god because they basically live at the mercy of storms and seas. And so essentially, it's part of that thing we were talking about at the beginning where it's human beings do things to comfort themselves, or when they're trying to think about something that's really terrifying and hard to comprehend, they make up things to use as a way to interface. So the idea of thinking about a storm god, it makes it easier to think about and remember the characteristics of the storm. And then you can tell stories about God, and stories are carried on and told again, and everybody learns how to survive, the storm. So I think that's essentially what Martin is doing. Since the work through natural forces, there are some people who access magic through fire, and so they perceive a fire deity. And the thing is, if you listen to Mel's, it's really esoteric. It's like he's the fire of the sun, he's the light of the moon, he's the fire in the earth. It's like all fire is R'hllor. So it's like R'hllor basically epitomizes the essence of fire and fire magic. And that's essentially how I think Martin's thinking about things.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Or when it comes to the fire magic, see, I had lost my train of thought again. I keep thinking of things in the middle of you saying them, and then like it gets
I'll
lost
try to
because
keep
I'm
my
trying to listen
comments
to it.
shorter. No, I always go for the pivot. I'm like, anything.
Yeah. It was something to do with what you said about fire magic, but oh, well, whatever. It'll come back to me in a little bit. I asked my patrons, to give some responses as to what they thought about the sci-fi versus magic idea in A Song of Ice and Fire, and I got a few responses, so I'm gonna read them. Philip of House Harris said, "A Song of Ice and Fire is the first book I've read like this. I am new to this world, so I'd have to say magic. But for every magic, there is science behind it. Even if science can't explain it, there is something there." I mean, I think that'd be true in the real world, but in A Song of Ice and Fire, where like magic is actually, it has characteristics that our world does not have in anywhere. So yeah. Teresa says, "I really don't think it's sci-fi. Any explanation for it being sci-fi I've heard seems to be based on the conspiracy theory that all magic in A Song of Ice and Fire is actually science. However, I haven't found any conclusive evidence for this in the shows or books. Is there something I'm missing? I don't think there's anything you're missing, Teresa. I just don't think there's any evidence. I really don't. Sean Aspinall says, reading the books initially made me think it was just magic. However, after listening to a range of different channels such as yourself, Order of the Green Hand, Preston Jacobs, and Secrets of the Citadel, to name a few, for a long time, I'll come to the conclusion that it must be a combination of the two. Things such as the dragons and the house of the many-faced god can definitely be attributed to magic, whilst the geography, for example, definitely has a basis in science. I don't know exactly what you mean by the geography.
He hasn't made a. I mean, he hasn't made a science-free world. He didn't like.
No.
I mean, he's using earthquakes and volcanoes and shit, but like, look at the Doom, okay? It wasn't just a volcanic explosion.
No.
It's left a magical fallout zone for 400 years. Like, there's no sci-fi answer for that. That's magic.
Yeah.
He's taken a natural thing, a volcanic explosion, and he's injected it with magic. Just like he did with the dragon glass, just like he did with comets and the meteors.
The breaking of the world, yeah.
Yeah, so he's basing his magical ideas off of stuff in nature, but this quote speaks for itself. Like, he's saying, look, there's magic in my universe, and I don't want anyone to feel like they understand it. It's supposed to be mysterious.
Yeah.
So that's...
And Sean, when you say that the geography has a basis in science, I'm confused as to what you mean. Like, as in what? As in, as in the shape of the continents? I wish you could elaborate on that, because I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about.
So Gray Area says the moons colliding seems like science. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gray Area. This is a great example. So normally when a comet strikes a moon, the moon doesn't, that just doesn't happen. And even setting aside that, so I'm saying basically the comet had to have been magic. It's the only way that even happens. And then the whole idea of the long night is that Martin's basing it off of a real thing, which is that a meteor impact can throw up smoke and cloud the sky, and that's a scientific idea. But that doesn't create imbalanced seasons, and that doesn't turn loose hordes of ice demons. So we know that the long night also had a magical element. And since we've been shown that dragon glass can be magical, and we're told that the dawn meteor is magical, my theory, and I think what makes sense, is that this whole idea of a comet and moon meteors, there's always an element of magic in it. So, again, I look at the Doom. It's sort of rational to understand that the volcanoes exploded. That's a geological thing. However, there's magic pumped into it, and leaves this magical fallout zone that lasts 400 years. And so that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like Martin, this basic idea of a meteor impact winter, and then let's make a fantasy version of it. And so we have this big magical comet that explodes the moon, and the meteors stand, and it somehow turns loose the others, and the seasons are thrown off. And he always says, when people ask him about the seasons, he again says it's going to be a magical-based explanation, not a scientific one. And that doesn't mean it's going to be completely irrational, like, oh, well, the sun just went dark because magic. But it's going to be whatever the cause was, the mechanism will be a magical mechanism,
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. Mm-hmm. I got one more Patreon response, and it's Eleni Palmos, and she just says, I'd believe it's...
Got some porn. Are you interested? Should I ban this person, or are you interested?
Wait, what did he say?
It's just a porn message, but I didn't know if that was a game to ban it anymore.
Well, Eleni Palmos just said, I believe it's a post-apocalyptic world ruled by dark forces. And this idea that A Song of Ice and Fire is a post-apocalyptic world, I think that was originally, and I could be wrong, I think that was originally Preston Jacobs that said that came up with the idea that it was post-apocalyptic, and that's what the Long Night was and all that. I'm not too super familiar with it, but...
Well, the Long Night an apocalypse, but the post-apocalyptic meaning like there was a technically advanced society, like a modern society, before the Long Night. And again, in the Shannara series, that's what happens. Like it starts off with the fantasy story, and eventually you find out that the fantasy world they live in is what happened to like northern Canada after a nuclear war 1,000 years in the past, right? But the thing is, like, when you have that sort of idea back of your mind as an author, you do that because you want to bring it into the story and make it relevant.
Yeah.
And that's what Terry Brooks does, is eventually you get to the point where everybody knows that they're living in a post-technological world, and they start finding technology. They find electric lighting and stuff. But that's not what A Song of Ice and Fire is doing. A Song of Ice and Fire is not doing that. We're not going to find electric lighting in Bloodraven's cave. We're not going to find a spaceship in the heart of winter. It's just not like, that's not the story that's being told here at all. I just don't see how you can even think that.
One, the Shannara Chronicles, the show on MTV, is terrible. I've never read the books, but the show's terrible. And two, yeah, I definitely agree.
The books are okay when you're younger. I'll say that. It's kind of like reading it when you're. It's like okay, and not so much anymore. But there's some good books in the series.
Okay. Well, yeah. Like I said before, if that were the case in Song of Ice and Fire, like you'd be able to trace this. You'd be able to trace it, and you'd like everyone would be coming to that conclusion. I just feel like that's something that's. Because the way the internet works, I think when George R. R. Martin wrote these novels, he didn't really expect the internet to become what it became. And now, in between writing them, people are figuring everything out because he leaves all those traces. He leaves all that detail and all the hints and stuff. So people are figuring it out. But yeah, I think that if he intended for that to be the way this story is, and there'd be hints, just like there's hints about everything else, just like there are hints about R plus L equals J or anything, we'd know this. We'd have some solid grasp. It'd be more than just, they're kind of caves and, we got telepathy and, I just feel like that's a stretch. That's a stretch, but I've said that a bunch of times.
So Vanessa Amnesty says, the Doom was an inside job, it is known. That's actually, I like that theory. Like, okay, so we know the Faceless Men were involved, but it's just kind of interesting that the Targaryens moved away 12 years before it happened, and then we're like, oh yeah, we had this prophecy. That's why we moved. You can definitely imagine a scenario where maybe they moved away, and it's like conveniently they ended up as the only people in the world with dragons after the Doom.
Are you saying the Targaryens assassinated the other dragon lords and everyone in Valyria? That is fucked up. That is.
I don't think it happened, but you could make a case for it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it is suspicious. But what we're supposed to think happened is that Daenerys the Dreamer had a vision and then foresaw it. But yeah, it is quite suspicious that.
Well, the winners write history, right?
Yeah. 100 years.
Now, the reason why I don't believe in that theory is we've been shown that Valyrians have prophetic dreams and they have dragon dreams.
Daenerys.
It's likely that Maester Aemon has them. Daemon Blackfire's son, the Fiddler, John the Fiddler, has them. It's a thing. So it's most likely that Daenerys the Dreamer was actually having prophecy. But you could make a theory. You can make the case for the inside jobs.
I was almost sure you were going to include Tyrion on the list of names. But yeah, just straight up, Daenerys has freaking dreams. Like throughout this fucking book series, she has prophetic dreams, like over and over and over again. She sees more prophetic stuff than anybody in the entire story. She gets like the most prophetic shit. Like she's the. So yeah, definitely. I think she just had a vision.
Brendan Parker says the elites are squishers. Wake up, sheeple. Interesting thing though, the others have blue blood.
Yeah.
Blue blood is
like octopuses.
Blue blood is a metaphor for the royalty. The blue blood.
Mm-hmm.
Blue blood's like a medieval term.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes you. It could be an implication that the Targaryen, or not The others are
The true rulers of Westeros.
right. They're,
Okay.
they're they're descended from king's blood or some shit
A
like that.
crazy theory that I was thinking of, and it's crazy, and it doesn't match with even some of my other theories. But it, like, don't judge me on this because this is just some crazy that I'm thinking about. Okay, so imagine a world where Westeros was like completely fucking frozen, and you have like these ice beings that just live there, and then out of the ground, like burrowing from the ground, come these fucking like little fucking creatures with like fucking slitted eyes, and they fucking take over and they start melting all the fucking ice, and then they fucking war with these creatures, and these creatures fucking make the ice people like go way up in the fucking north. You get what I'm getting at. What if the children of the forest took fucking Westeros from the fucking others, and that's why the others are fucking pissed off, and that's why they came the first time? Because the children of the forest, they don't write shit down. They don't write down their legends. Everything that they are is stored in the werewood tree. So like this legend wouldn't exist within the zeitgeist of humanity. We would not know about it. It would be something between the children and the others, you know. And that's just some crazy shit that I was thinking of the other night. But yeah, yeah. Chew on that. And the children of the forest stole this land from the others. It was theirs
So
first.
Gray Area is talking about dragons died in the Doom. She's saying fire can't kill dragons. I mean, I don't know, but
Magic
the
fire
Doom
can.
yeah, I mean, the Doom killed all the dragons. So, I mean, I can only conclude that, I mean, they all got knocked in the head with flying rocks or whatever. But there's also like the sulfur and the burning gas, and I
The
mean,
eruption.
yeah, I don't know that.
The eruption was
Yeah, and
sent by the people in the shadow because the Valyrians were not doing what they wanted them to do. They had an agreement, and the Valyrians broke the agreement. And the people in the shadow fucking did some weird fucking magic and made the volcanoes explode because they gave them the
That's a good
knowledge.
conspiracy.
Yeah, yeah. They gave them the knowledge. They taught them how to tame dragons, and they were like, okay, you're not doing what we want you to do, and you're fucking shit up, so yeah, you're gone. And they wiped them off, so just, it was like that. It was an execution. It's just like, bam, you're gone. Like, the Empire was just destroyed, like, immediately. Just like one, and it's crazy. Within an
There's
hour.
also, sorry, I was just going to finish up on the idea of the dragons. When Sunfire and Moondancer collide, Moondancer's eyes are burnt by the fire of Sunfire. So I don't think the dragons are completely resistant to fire. I just think they're highly resistant to fire, but their eyes are vulnerable. And if a fire is hot enough, then like a volcanic eruption, like if a dragon falls into a vat of lava, I think it's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it can just like swim in the lava. I don't know. I mean, we're not really.
I don't know. It depends on which
We're not really
one's hotter.
That's would be my thoughts from what we're shown.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like fire would have to be exceptionally hot to hurt a dragon, because like
Well, yeah, like a volcano.
yeah. But see, is dragon fire hotter or cooler than lava from a volcano? I don't know if we could really say.
Well, it doesn't matter, but the dragons can't bathe in dragon fire. Like when one dragon
Mm-hmm.
shoots its fire on the other, like melts its eyes. Like
You're true.
the
Yeah,
dragons.
that's accurate.
I mean, the dragons are shooting the fire away from them. Like they're resistant enough to be right next to it. But if you bathe a dragon in fire, I think it's going to hurt the dragon.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it goes along with Skyrim, because in Skyrim you can kill a fire with dragon. You can kill
So
a
gray
dragon with
areas,
fire.
like didn't they find them inside the volcanoes? Yeah, in the volcanic caverns.
According
but
to
not-
one legend. That's
But
just
probably not swimming around inside the lava. That's what I'm saying. Like they're resistant to like hang out in volcanic caverns.
yeah.
But I don't know that they can swim around inside the lava.
They were like layering in like the caves and stuff like that.
Right.
But that's according to one story, because there's multiple different ideas, even in the world of Ice and Fire, about how the Valyrians came across dragons and where they came from. There's multiple different ones.
Yeah, and George has specifically chosen to say that all the Valyrian reds were lost in the Doom, and we really don't know because he doesn't want to answer a lot of these questions. He wants it to be mysterious, and so he's same reason Howland Reed is never on screen. He knows too much.
Howland Reed. He'll show up eventually. Just keep up hope, guys. Maybe we'll see him next season because Mira Reed is going back home because Bran kicked her to the curb. So I guess if you care about the show anymore, but yeah. So yeah, I did have some Patreon questions that were kind of unrelated to the topic, but I'll get to those now, I guess.
Yeah,
So
give this patron some love.
yeah. So my page, like Connor Duro says, what will happen to your channel once Game of Thrones is over? Ha ha ha. Game of Thrones over. Have you not heard they're doing 5 spin-offs? And also, my channel is primarily a Song of Ice and Fire content. And, like I said, Dune is a new chapter in this channel, and then like my Pennywise It videos have been insanely popular, like way more popular than I ever thought they'd freaking be. Like hundreds of thousands of views on some of those videos. So like people, I've got a ton of subscribers that just ask me for the Stephen King stuff all the time. But yeah, and then Song of Ice and Fire, The Winds of Winter is gonna be out within, I'd say probably next year it's coming out. Like I think it's pretty safe to say that next year it's coming out. I hope I'm not jinxing it. But like Winds of Winter is out. That's years and years of content for this channel. And there's plenty of stuff from the other 5 books that I have not talked about on this channel. So there's so much. There's so much that I can do after Game of Thrones is over. All right. Philip of House Harris says, if you're ever in Macon, Georgia. Wait, didn't I read these? I feel like these are the questions that I read last time. Yeah.
Are you pulling up the wrong windows again? You gotta be careful about that.
No. Oh, my Patreon thing just hadn't refreshed. Okay, Philip of House Harris says, how do you think Dany will receive any of the help sent to her, Tyrion, Maesters, Victorian? Is there any chance we will see Dany with some real battle armor next season? You're blending? Okay, I think that's 2 different questions. One's about the book and one's about the show. So the book question is, how do you think Dany will receive any of the help sent to her, Tyrion, the Maesters, Victorian? Well, like, I think that she'll be very, very kind of weary on the whole Tyrion thing. Because, this is the brother of the guy that killed her father, 1. And 2, I think she'll meet anybody warily because Quaithe has already been like, don't trust none of these motherfuckers. Quaithe has been whispering in Daenerys' ear like for this whole time, just telling her not to trust anyone. So I think any of these people, if Dany sees them and they kind of fit, the prophecy that Quaithe gives her on the top of the pyramid in book 5, I think she'll be wary. Like Victorian can be interpreted as the Kraken, so she'll definitely take him warily. And so yeah, I think she'll just take it like like I'm a little taken aback, but I think she'll take what she needs from each person. Like you said, Maesters, I assume you mean Marwyn. So I mean, if he can prove to her that what he's talking about is true, like show her something. But we were talking about this a few streams ago, I think. If he can prove to her and like show her something that she couldn't see, and prove to her that he's on her side, then I think she might take him well. Do you have any thoughts about that, Lucifer?
I was trying to look up a quote. Say it again.
Oh, he said, how do you think Dany will receive any of the help sent to her, the Maesters, Tyrion, Victorian in the books? Like, how do you think
Well, the
she'll
one
react?
I'm excited about is Marwyn the Mage. I talked about this last time because Marwyn the Mage almost certainly brought one of those candles with him, and Dany is a Valyrian.
Yeah.
Access to magic. Basically, she's going to become a full Valyrian sorceress if she's using more Valyrian magic. And I'd like to see her use that glass candle. So I want to see her accept Marwyn's help. And I think, obviously, going to have some interaction with Tyrion. I don't know if it'll be like what it is in the books, but probably not too different. I think the first one we're going to see is Victorian, how he's going to, because he's just landing in the middle of the battle.
He's already there. Well, Tyrion's there too, but Victorian's kind of a bigger thing.
So we have the question of what's going to happen in King's Landing before Dany, what's going to happen in Meereen before Dany gets back, and then what will happen when Dany gets back. So
I think
that's going to be fun to see.
I think
It'll be the most action we've had.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say it'll be the most action we've had in Meereen pretty much so far.
Yeah. I think Dany will get back just as damn it. How's his name fucking like Barristan? Just as Barristan's dying, I think she'll probably see him die. Because I think he probably is going to die in this battle. I think this is his final fucking big thing. The fucking defensive marine. It's going to be a fucking amazing battle to go out in. I think he'll have a good death. But I think this is his last battle. And then I think Daenerys will get back and, you know, it'll be cool. She'll come back with... I think it'll be similar to the way it goes down in the show. Just maybe... Because, like... Cause in the show, you literally have Viserion and Rhaegal breaking through the fucking walls to get to Daenerys. And in the book, they're already out, so it kind of makes more sense, I guess, if they fight with her. Because I think ultimately that, you know, the dragons go by, like, kind of a dominant system, so I think Drogon is the dominant dragon, because he seems to be. So I think they'll follow Drogon and kind of do what he's doing, and that's how she'll kind of control them. And she'll also probably be using the Dothraki, because that scene... In Season 6, we saw that scene in a prophecy, basically. Daenerys sees the crones bow before her beneath the Mother of Mountains, which is exactly what happens in the show. So something like that is going to happen in the book. That was something they took directly from the book, that fucking quote from A Clash of Kings. So that's something that's going to happen in the books. So yeah, so that's just some of my ideas, what goes down. Yeah. I have one more Patreon question. Johans, I always pronounce your name wrong, and I always forget to like look it up and see how it's pronounced, but I'm gonna pronounce it wrong one more time. Johans Poihonen. Okay. Have you heard about the Theon Durden theory, where the hooded man of Winterfell who confronts Theon is actually Theon's imagination? Haven't heard many YouTubers talk about this theory. Huh. I have not heard
It's
that
pretty
theory.
fun.
Huh?
I don't true, but it's fun to think about.
It was just his imagination.
Yeah, it's just what it sounds like.
Oh.
He's committing the murders, but in a disassociative way, so he doesn't know that he's doing it.
Oh, that's some creepy shit, though. Like, I kind of like it.
It is. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of creepy. Like, it's fun to think about. It's kind of like the bolt-on theory. Like, probably not true, but made a little bit of sense. It's fucked up.
Dude, I like that. I wish Martin had have actually thought about that and actually made that what was going on. No, but I think Theon has a different destiny. That's not what's going. But that'd be cool. That'd be fucking cool. That'd be a cool twist. I like it. I like it. Now that I hear about it, I think it's cool. I don't think that's what's actually happening. I don't. Sorry, but I do like it. That's pretty fucking cool. Okay. I'm looking at some. Go ahead.
Gray Area asked a question. We should answer it. She asked, "Do we think that we'll lose Viserion
in the book?" Yeah, I think Viserion will probably go to Euron. I think that'll be how Daenerys loses that one dragon. I think Euron will bind it with the dragon binder, and he'll be in control of it. I don't think it'll be like a fucking ice spear. No.
What do you think? What do you think about the foreshadowing with Tyrion in the Winter chapter, where he's playing Syvass and he picks up the white dragon that's covered with blood?
I don't know. It could be the fourth dragon. I did a video a while ago, like a year ago, and it was about like the possibility of another dragon, like other than Daenerys' three. And then one of the things that I pointed to was the World of Ice and Fire. If you look at like one of the opening pages, it's got like the three-headed Targaryen dragon, and then there's like another dragon, like looks like it's like they're just opposed to each other, like they're fighting, like so like Targaryen dragons versus another dragon, and it's like the size of the other three dragons, like combined. So it's like, yeah. So I was talking about the possibility of a fourth dragon, but you know, it could have just been a design, it could have just been a cool design. But I thought it was interesting that it was the three-headed dragon, which represents House Targaryen, versus another dragon, and that's just like one of the. I think that's like the front page of the World of Ice and Fire. Like as soon as you open it.
Yeah, it is. And remember also that ice dragons are said to be bigger than fire dragons.
Yeah.
And in the book, The Ice Dragon, it is one ice dragon versus fire dragons, the final fight. So I look at it this way, okay? George almost didn't put the fire dragon in the books, okay? He had to be convinced by a friend to put them in, and he's done. But even before he ever wrote A Song of Ice and Fire, he was writing a version of the Ice Dragon, what's now put out as, quote, a children's story, the Ice Dragon. And the whole thing about the Ice Dragon is that it's something George made. fire dragons, those have been around in a lot of stories for thousands of years, and flaming swords, nothing new. Like, you're just borrowing stuff all over the place from mythology and classic literature. But I think the ice dragon is kind of his thing. And I mean, I'm sure there's something similar out there somewhere, but the point is, like, the others and the ice dragons are sort of his baby. And you sort of get the sense he likes the Knight of Ice more. He's more interested in it. So what I'm building up to saying is that George said there won't be ice dragons in the story. What? Can I get a link to that, Chrissy of Old Stones?
I
know that
have
he
not
said
heard that.
I know that he said the short story of Ice Dragon was not set in A Song of Ice and Fire, but I've not heard they said there won't be ice dragons in A Song of Ice and Fire. Because I tend to think, how can he resist putting that in there? It's like he's created this awesome fantasy thing that's not in any other books or whatever. Like, how is he not going to have it make an appearance? So I tend to think that he will.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I thought that he actually even said that he invented the ice dragon. Didn't he say that?
Yeah, I think so.
Uh-huh.
And yes, Tyrell says, why can't it come from the deep, in the land of always winter? That's exactly where I think it will come from. It's either going to be that pond, that cold pond beneath the heart tree in Winterfell. That's like a melted ice dragon and reconstitute, or it's going to come out of the north somehow. Yeah.
I heard that. I heard an idea that the Winds of Winter was in reference to a dragon named Winter, and that, the others riding on the Winds of Winter was like his wings.
There you go.
Okay,
so Chrissy of Old Stones is saying, oh wait, I think that was it. He meant the ice dragon in the Ice Dragon book. Yeah, so the Ice Dragon book is okay. Now someone else is saying, I also remember there won't be an ice dragon. Well, hopefully we can answer this question, because I'd like to know if he said that or not.
I, for one, have never heard that I've never heard him saying that there wouldn't be an ice dragon. Like, that's my first time hearing that. Because I don't think
be a remarkable amount of self-control if that's the case.
For him to even say that, that's kind of like, I wouldn't, because like there's ice dragons are like suggested to exist in the world of Ice and Fire, and I'm pretty sure it's like even in the sidebars, which are the parts that he writes specifically himself. Like,
it is, yeah.
So I'm just like,
well, he writes more than the sidebars too. Like, that's a little bit of a misconception. Like, he started off just writing the sidebars, but in the end, he wrote the vast majority of that book. I mean, he wrote 300,000 words for that book, and it's only 180,000 words long. I mean, he wrote a ton of stuff for it. It blossomed. So there's early quotes from the project about who did what, and then later quotes after the project has evolved a bit. And yeah, so George wrote a lot more than the sidebars. I just want to clear that up.
Yeah, that is true. But like I read
basically like all the new stuff is George. Like, Elio and Linda did not spin any of those myths that are in that story. Like, that's George. Elio and Linda compiled. That's what they're compilers, and they compiled all the background information that was already in there, and then they put it in a little bit of a narrative. So that's like the early part of the book where it's all that historical grit. Like, they took care of that, so George didn't have to do all the hard work of organizing all that raw data. But every time it goes into like a narrative where you have a dragon fight, or you have a story about, an old myth or something, that's definitely George. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, but yeah, I think people do underestimate the amount of work that he put into it specifically. And when I talk about the sideboards, I only go to them because, like, this is like, if you want to know for sure what George R. Martin, something that it's something that George R. Martin definitely wrote. If it's in the sidebars, it's definitely him. But like, also, George R. Martin approved all the art for that book. Like, he worked with the artists, and like when they had something wrong, he'd tell them to go redraw that. So these are definitely his ideas and his vision for this story. And I remember years ago, there was some YouTuber that reviewed The World of Ice and Fire, and they called it like fan fiction. And I remember thinking that, they were really, really underestimating what George R. Martin was doing. And, some people don't like The World of Ice and Fire. They say that it's boring. And I'm just thinking, well, it's a history book. It's not meant to be read like A Dance with Dragons, where it's a narrative. It's not a narrative. So, like, it's like reading a textbook. So, of course, it's not just going to flow like a normal novel. So saying it's boring, that's vapid criticism, if I'm being honest. Honestly,
So here's a good question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you can go ahead. I was just rambling.
Okay, so Purple Badger asks, do you think this is related to what Bran sees, the dragon rising from Winterfell? And that's during Ramsay's attack of Winterfell when Bran is walking in the summer and he sees basically a serpent whose
Yeah.
roar is a river of flame. And then he asks, if not, what do you think that's a reference to? Jon, a dragon beneath Winterfell.
Man, I think that's a
So
dragon.
I want to think it's a dragon too. It's the logistics are a little bit hard, like
Yeah.
where'd it come from, but like how's it living there without anybody knowing? If it just had flying, like there's a few problems, but they come out and say like, oh, you made enough noise to wake a dragon. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Huh.
But the question is getting to the idea of I don't think that what Bran saw could be the ice dragon because it specifically describes it as like fire
Yeah.
that looks like a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
but John, the whole idea of a dragon beneath Winterfell, in a sense, that is a metaphor for John. Like he is the dragon beneath Winterfell, but there could also be a dragon sword or a dragon egg or something like that. If you think about it, if there's only just a dragon egg down there in the crypts and not a dragon, that still could be pretty. That would be a pretty good indicator of Jon's Targaryen lineage. If you have like dragon's egg and the Targaryen crown or some shit
And
like
him
that.
and Daenerys can find them, and she'll be like, "I know how to hatch these," and they can hatch more dragons, and then it'll be good. Yeah, tons of dragon eggs.
I don't even think they need to hatch it necessarily. They just signify, because Targaryens are given a dragon egg,
Oh yeah.
hatch. So if they have one of those, it could just signify his heritage. But
Uh-huh.
maybe they could use it to make dragon bomb, like at Summerhall.
Uh-huh.
Ooh.
But if they ever needed another dragon, Daenerys knows how to hatch them. Because like people have tried before, but she's the only one that succeeded since the time of Valyria. Well, not since the time of Valyria, but since a while.
Unfortunately, we do have to pass on to the pyre.
Just get a witch to sing a song and it should be fine. Like I am firm under the belief that what protected Daenerys from the fire was the witch's song. I think that when she said, "You will not hear me scream," that's what she intended. She intended to like sing a song, do some magic, and make her invulnerable to the fire. But for some reason, it worked on Daenerys instead. For some reason, I'm not sure why, but that's what I think happened. That's why I think she survived the fire. Because she's not immune to fire, like, at all. Like, in the show, she is. But in the book, she's, like, totally not. Like, there's no case... Like, her hands get burned at... Like, from riding Drogon, I think, when she's in the pit. Like, she's all burned from that. And, yeah, so I don't think it's an immunity. I think Targaryens have, like... They have, like, +2 fire resistance. And that's it. Or at least some of them do. But then on top of that, there were more forces in play that allowed her to survive. That's what I think is going on.
Hold on, I'm hating on RLJ denial in the chat.
Oh, really?
Sorry, what we're talking about?
No, I was talking about the fact that Daenerys is not fireproof and that I think it was Mirri Maz Duur's song that protected her from the fire. That's what I said.
Mm. I tend to think it's like George said it was a miracle, but I also think it's something miraculously happens to Targaryens sometimes.
That they're just like protected from fire sometimes. Okay, I got a question on that other video. Well, it's more like a statement. Blue Milk says, "I've come to the conclusion that part of what makes humans unique in our story is their ability to alter reality on belief alone. A Song of Ice and Fire is a story from a well-known science fiction writer, and I'm willing to bet that some of the concepts are carried over." Yeah, that's interesting. Because belief does alter reality in more like in this universe in more ways than one. Like I said, it alters reality on a metaphysical level, and it also alters reality in a real level, but an abstract level. So yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I do.
No, Targaryens aren't fireproof by rule, but they are the blood of the dragon, and that's something. We don't know what that means, but the bloodlines of the Targaryens are clearly magical. So I don't think it's a coincidence that it was Dany who miraculously survived fire that time. I think it's definitely a miracle. Like, I don't think any Targaryen can just walk into a bonfire like in the show, where you can plan for it. You know, like Dany ambushed those cows in the tent or whatever, knowing that she could just light it on fire and walk out. Like, I don't think Book Dany can do that or act that way.
George R. Martin said that it won't happen again.
Yeah, so it's something of a miracle, but at the same time, it's like that was also the blood of the dragon who did the miracle, and that's not a coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing with magic. It's not something that you can do over and over and over again. That's super predictable. It works sometimes, and then sometimes it doesn't, for reasons that, probably aren't going to be explained. And, that's kind of the whole point. That's what makes it magic. I'd love to hear the science fiction explanation for why Daenerys survived the fire. Is it like, would there be like a genetic thing being argued here? Or
oh, come on, that's just trolling to try to figure out everything that's obviously magic. Like, well, it could be science fiction. Like, no,
I've seen some stuff that like catalogs like the Targaryen genes, and it like uses like Punnett squares, and I think that's like a Preston Jacobs thing too. Like, he did like Punnett squares, and he was like, this person has the Dragon Rider gene, that person doesn't have it, and it was really detailed, and I was just like, holy shit, like, you really went this far to try and make this work. But I don't think for a second that George R. Martin thought that far back. I don't think that George R. Martin was looking at Punnett squares and going, this person has that gene, and writing the timelines while doing that. That just seems like crazy to me.
So I don't know how to say this. Ano Nothing, I guess, says, it looks like he's quoting from a magazine or something. As Martin later clarified on his live journal blog, the ice dragon is not in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, as, quote, the world of A Song of Ice and Fire did not exist when I wrote the Ice Dragon. And that's what I'm saying. He wrote the Ice Dragon first. And so it seems that he's basically borrowed the Ice Dragon concept and put it in the background of A Song of Ice and Fire. Because in the world of Ice and Fire, we're told they have legends of the Ice Dragon in the Shivering Sea. And then, of course, there's a constellation called the Ice Dragon. And then John, in his inner monologue, compares the wall to an ice dragon, which means that he's probably heard stories or fables about ice dragons. So it's been sort of carried over into A Song of Ice and Fire. And the book, The Ice Dragon, is not written to be in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. I usually think of the Ice Dragon as like a story that old Nan might tell, something like that.
Okay. Well, look, I write stories, right? And then one time I wrote a bigger story, and it had a bunch of stuff from my smaller stories in it, but it wasn't they weren't in the same universe. It just had stuff from that story in it because I liked those ideas. And that's exactly what George R. Martin has done here. And I don't get why that's so hard for people to wrap their heads around. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but I'm just saying that to me, that's obviously what happens. Like, he's, of course, inspired by his older work. But it does not necessarily mean that it's all in the same universe. That's reaching. It's very, very reaching to me. And I've said that multiple times. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. But people keep hitting me with this idea. Like on so many videos I get, what do you think about this idea? What do you think about this idea? And I've said it so many times. These are my thoughts. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, talking about the magic versus science thing. I did a video a while ago called A Defense of Magic where I talk about this, but I really wanted to get into depth on this podcast and really talk about these ideas and what I think about them. So that's the main reason why I wanted to do this. But yeah. Magic. And I haven't seen a good argument yet. Like, I've been looking at some of you guys in the chat and seeing what some of you guys think, and to be honest, I'm just not convinced. Just not convinced. But if I'm just missing something and you really want to get something to me, message me on Facebook, because if you can send like a bunch of paragraphs and then like I can read it and then maybe I can kind of try and figure out what you're talking about. But at this point, it seems to me like There's no evidence to suggest any of that. Any of that. All right. Okay.
Let's see here. You're looking at the chat, looking for some more questions.
Yeah. Someone on my other video says, I believe the power that Melisandre talks about is the blood of the first men, descendants from the gods, like the Valyrians and many other houses throughout Westeros, descendants of the first men. I'm sure belief also gives you power, but not to create magic. Well, I never said belief gives you the power to create magic. I think belief aids in the working of magic, is what I was trying to get across. And as far as men being descended from gods, well, you do have the Emperor of the Dawn, who was, essentially a god, and he had children. He did have children, and he apparently lived for thousands of years and then ascended into the stars. So maybe there is something to be said for people with the blood of so-called gods, because I don't think he was a real god, but maybe like a so-called god, maybe something with non-human blood. Maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts on that question, or that statement.
And someone in the chat has pointed out, Elwin Zirex, that in fact Old Nan did tell stories about ice dragons, according to John.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was saying it's pretty easy to think about George's ice dragon story as like a story that Old Nan might have told, But my whole point was that George has created this awesome thing called the ice dragon. And like you said, when you write a new story, you frequently use elements of things in your old stories. George Martin has done a ton of that. There's a ton of things in his previous short stories that he's used and developed further and then put in A Song of Ice and Fire, because A Song of Ice and Fire is his magnum opus. So there you go.
Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. And like I always say, if you're watching this video now, feel free to leave a like. Go ahead. Why are you not liking? Oh my god.
I guess, okay, so I sort of lost my train of thought, but what I was saying was, because it's his magnum opus, how's he not going to put the ice dragon in there? Like, it's one of the coolest things he's ever invented. He's writing his big fantasy novel. Like, I don't know. I can't see him finishing this thing without having the ice dragon put in an appearance.
It seems
I think
like
we
he
will
has
see
to. Like, I mean, I know, like, it has to. It has to. And the fact that there are already hints and, like, little subtle things to get you prepared for the idea of one. And we've got fire dragons, and then we've got, emphasis on fire made flesh. So you would naturally think, reading this series, oh, what does an ice dragon look like? It's called A fucking Song of Ice and Fire. So naturally, you would think, well, ice dragon. That's a natural progression, isn't it? Is it not? So, like, yeah. Ice dragons are coming, in my opinion.
And I also think there's a fire equivalent to an other. So my new episode that I just put out is comparing Melisandre and the Night's Queen. And if you look at Melisandre, there's a lot of clues that she's undergoing a process of transformation as opposed to being resurrected, where she talks about she barely needs to sleep right now, and soon she hopes to not sleep at all. She talks about having the fire inside her and transforming her. And there's a few other reasons why I think she's not a white, but that's not really the point. The point is that Melisandre seems to be transforming through fire magic, and she says that she doesn't need to eat and that R'hllor gives her all the nourishment that she needs. And so I think that if Melisandre keeps going long enough, she might eventually turn into the fiery equivalent of an other.
She'd be like a flame Atronach from Skyrim.
And I think that is, yeah, exactly. And I think that's why the fire priests of R'hllor tattoo flames on their face. It's like a memory of something old. Like we were talking about how that last kiss ritual used to resurrect people and then they forgot. Well, I feel like them wearing clothes that literally look like they're on fire and tattooing their faces with flames, it's almost like a memory of people that literally were fire.
Seems like it. When you put it all together and you bring it up that way, that seems like a likely train of thought, a
And
likely conclusion.
and the others appear to be transformed humans in some sense. Like, I mean, I think there's more to it in the books than what we saw on the TV show. But even in the books, they ride horses and they speak and they have swords and they have bones and blood. So they really seem like humans that have transformed into an ice being. And I think Melisandre's doing a similar thing through fire. Okay, so here's a good question. I know you'll like this, Quinn.
Okay.
From David Hunter, who always asks really good questions. He says, when it comes to gods, do you think that the manna in the air reacts to the faith, prayer of the believers and takes on the appearance of a deity to them? Communal magic, self-hypnosis.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty deep, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's what's happening, but I would love it if that was what was happening. That's very, very interesting. I've never heard it quite thought of that way. I definitely like the idea. I'd have to look and see if there's any evidence to suggest that that's what was going on, but I could definitely see that being a mechanism by which, people see these gods and they see all this stuff in A Song of Ice and Fire. Very
And
interesting.
I can see George thinking about things in those loose terms because he's a big deadhead.
Hmm.
And all deadheads sort of understand the power of group sort of hypnosis or group suggestion. I've got some deadhead friends that tell some pretty crazy stories about that. Like,
Yeah.
if everybody thinks something can happen in an enclosed space, sometimes some crazy shit can happen. That's something that a lot of deadheads will tell you that. So
That was kind of the plot of one of Dan Brown's book. It was the one they skipped over because they did the Da Vinci Code, they did Angels and Demons. They skipped over the lost symbol, and yeah, and it was basically like someone that created like a computer program that could do so. It was like something about the power of like fucking thought, and like if people like get together and think shit, then like shit'll just happen. Like you could think something into existence or some shit, which I definitely don't agree with. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the power of belief. I'm not talking about something like that. I'm talking about something much more subtle. But yeah. And like
and then go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and when I talk about the power of belief on a metaphysical sense, I'm only talking about A Song of Ice and Fire. That does not apply to the real world. But yeah.
Right. Don't confuse me for a woo-woo master.
Yeah.
So then Cameron Charles asks, do you guys think the Isle of Faces and the Order of Green Hand, the Sacred Order of the Green Hand, will make an appearance next season?
Oh no.
I don't know about next season, but I do think we'll see it in TWOW.
You can forget about that in the show. Forget about it. And like if it happens, it'll be like some like fucking 30-second thing. You'll like see a green man get hit by like a fucking, I don't know. But then no, it's not gonna happen. Just
Well, what do you think? Let's broaden the question out then. What do you think in the books because George has said we will see the Isle of Faces. We'll get some sort of answer to what the Order of the Green Men is. So what do you think we'll see when we get there?
A bunch of werewood trees and some green men doing some stuff. I don't know. Like I really don't know. The Isle of Faces, the place where the children gathered to break the world. And there are some stories that suggest, I don't know how true these are, that the children fed their own children to the werewood trees in order to break the world, and then they tried to do it again at the neck, but failed. But it was like blood magic. So maybe these are people that, keep this hidden knowledge, still practice, sacrifice to the werewood trees and feed the werewood trees, or something like that. Maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah, I definitely think there was some blood sacrifice that went down there. So, hey, you sent me a question from YouTube earlier today from Angela Janssens that applies here. And she says, Quinn, please ask LML if a northern virgin girl of the blood of the first men, first kings, impregnated on the Isle of Faces would fit into into the symbolism of the sun penetrating the moon, Nissa Nissa, etc., and would she be venerated as a saint by the men of the north and the old gods? Also, is there a structure or tower on the Isle of Faces? So addressing the last part, I don't think there'll be a structure, but I do think there's a decent chance we're going to find some oily black stone on the Isle of Faces.
I hope so.
The symbolism would like that because the Isle of Faces is basically, an analog to the moon, which is what gave us the oily black stone, according to my theory, of course. And so, yeah, I would like to see some oily black stone on the Isle of Faces. And Moat Cailin might be oily black stone. It's hard to tell from that Theon quote in A Dance with Dragons because it's raining. But it says the black blocks of Moat Cailin appear to be coated in a fine black oil,
Hmm.
which kind of makes it oily black stone potentially. And Moat Cailin is super freaking weird, anyways. It doesn't really match anything else in the entire world except for Yeen, in that it's built out of giant square megalithic oily stone blocks.
Hmm.
It's like totally weird, Moat Cailin, and doesn't match with any of the other First Men castles. So to me, like I'm thinking that Moat Cailin was built before the Long Night, and that's why it's all crumbled. And it was built by some more mysterious people that aren't around in Westeros anymore, and that there's oily black stone source around there somewhere. That's my point. Like, if there might be some on the Isle of Faces, or just somewhere around there.
Interesting. Yeen is an interesting place. I don't know how many people really know anything about Yeen. It's cursed. It's a city so evil even the forest will not enter. Or so they say. I think that's actually, who said that? It's Nymeria, I believe. I think it was Nymeria. Or was it? Or it could
Keep
have
talking,
been,
and I'll pull up the
it was
quote.
either Nymeria or one of Rhaegar's wives. Not Rhaegar, Aegon's wife.
Let's see. So Nymeria refused and took her fleet to sea once again, hoping to find refuge amongst the steaming jungles of Sothorios. Some settled on Basilisk Point, others beside the glistening green waters of the Zamoyos, amongst quicksands, crocodiles, and rotting, half-drowned trees. Princess Nymeria herself remained with the ships at Zamatar, a Giscari colony abandoned for 1,000 years, while others made their way upriver to the Cyclopean ruins of Yeen, haunt of ghouls and spiders. And then let's see, it's as to what happened there. It says um, two of the new towns on Basilisk Point were raided by slavers, their populaces put to the sword or carried off in chains, whilst Yeen had to contend with attacks from the brindled ghouls of the jungle deeps. And then for more than a year, the Roynars struggled to live in Sothorios until the day when a boat from Zamatar arrived at Yeen to find that every man, woman, and child in that haunted, ruined city had vanished overnight. Then Nymeria summoned her people back to the ships and set sail once again. They got the out of there.
I would have too. See, that's why the that's why the Dorners survive, because they get the fuck out when shit gets like crazy. Like,
And
nope,
then
we're going.
the actual city, it says maesters and other scholars alike have puzzled over the greatest of the enigmas of Sothorios, the ancient city of Yeen, a ruin older than time, built of oily black stone, in massive blocks so heavy that it would require a dozen elephants to move them. Yeen has remained a desolation for many thousands of years, yet the jungle that surrounds it on every side has scarce touched it. A city so evil even the jungle will not enter, Nymeria is supposed to have said when she laid eyes on it, if the tales are true. Every attempt to build or resettle Yeen has ended in horror. So yeah, just your kind of place, Quinn.
Yeah, I'm moving to Yeen. That's the first place I'm going when I go to the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. Fuck no. You know where I'd actually go? I'd go immediately to the Summer Isles and just be like, peace, and I'd just be there, because like that seems like that, and maybe Dorne seems like too hot, like it would be just too hot and harsh. So I wouldn't do Dorne, but I definitely wouldn't go to fucking Westeros. I wouldn't go to the East because I don't want to get sold off into slavery or some shit. I go to the Summer Isles, and then I just chill. I just chill with those people and just wait out the winter there. And I feel like that'd be cool. But no.
Yeah, the Summer Isles actually, yeah, that's definitely the place to be in this whole world.
Yeah.
So now that we've just read that description of Yeen, check out this description of Moat Cailin from A Game of Thrones. Just beyond, through the mists, she glimpsed the walls and towers of Moat Cailin, or what remained of them. Immense blocks of black basalt, each as large as a crofter's cottage, lay scattered and tumbled like a child's wooden blocks, half sunken in the soft boggy soil. Nothing else remained of a curtain wall that had once stood as high as Winterfell's, which means either 50 or 80 feet. The wooden keep was gone entirely, rotted away 1,000 years past, with not so much as a timber to mark where it stood. All that was left of the great stronghold of the first men were three towers where there had once been 20.
Hmm.
So we had blocks that were so big that it would need a dozen elephants, and then we had blocks that were so big they were the size of a cottage. They're both black blocks, and like I said, in A Dance with Dragons, Theon observes Moat Caelin's blocks to be coated in a fine black oil because of the rain. So the descriptions kind of match. Like
Yeah.
they're sort of fortress-like cities. They're cyclopean square blocks, very mysterious. I definitely don't think the first men could have built this place. Really, I mean, they didn't build anything else like this.
All this stuff hints to a society or a civilization that's been all around the fucking world and just is able to vanish without a trace. Who could they be? I think they're people from the shadow. Or the deep ones. Or the deep ones working in tangent with the people in the shadow. It just gets deeper and deeper down the wormhole.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's a fun one. So
Yeah.
I figured you'd like that.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Okay.
So here's that, just to finish it up. Here's that once quote from Theon. Where once a mighty curtain wall had stood, only scattered stones remained, blocks of black basalt so large it must once have taken 100 men to hoist them into place. Some had sunk so deep into the bog that only a corner showed. Others lay strewn about like some god's abandoned toys, cracked and crumbling, spotted with lichen. Last night's rain had left the huge stones wet and glistening, and the morning sunlight made them look as if they were coated in some fine black oil. So it's hard to tell if that's meant to make us think that it's oily black stone or not.
To be
but
honest,
it's
it
kind of
sounds
he would
like it.
use that description. I mean, it does. Like, this is in A Dance with Dragons, so this is the most recent book that he wrote. It's pretty close to when he wrote The World of Ice and Fire, which is where he put all the oily black stone. I mean, we do get it in the Clash of Kings with the sea stone chair, but The World of Ice and Fire is where we hear about, Yin and Ashai, and the Toad Isle.
Yeah.
That's the other place.
Toad Isle is a very interesting one because to me that is like kind of the most solid evidence for the deep ones because the people there literally have fish faces and webbed hands and feet and worship a toad idol made of black stone. So I'm just like, and in Lovecraftian mythology, the deep ones are known to breed with people. Like deep one human hybrids are definitely a thing in Lovecraft's mythology. So yeah, I like that a lot. I like that was left in there.
Yeah, Quinn, what do you think about the high towers? People are talking about that in the chat, and I've got some ideas too. What do you think about that?
What do I think about? Well, what do you think about them?
Yeah, well, no, just like what's the deal with them? Like it seems like they're coming into the story more, and we've got Leighton Hightower locked up with the Mad Maid doing God knows what up there.
Oh.
What do you think is the deal with House Hightower in general?
I mean, I'm not sure. They're if I'm being honest, they're not a house that I really think about very often.
So you will like this quote. This is from A Feast for Crows.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see here.
Feast for Crows.
Sorry, go ahead. I don't have it. Keep talking. I'll find it.
Feast for Crows is a beast for hoes. I don't know. It rhymed.
Well, it's just it was something about him being locked up there with the Mad Maid, who's rumored to be like, it's one who dabbles in sorcery.
Uh-huh.
And the symbolism of the High Tower sigil has like a tower with a flame on the top, and it says "We light the way." So it makes you think of like a burning sword or a burning tree. We light the way sounds kind of Lightbringer-ish. The White Tower reminds you of the White Tower at Starfall, the Pale Stone Sword. And then at the Tower of Joy, we had the High Towers and Gerald Hightower and Arthur Dane next to each other. The High Towers have clues about being descended from the Great Empire of the Dawn, vis-a-vis the Fewstone Fortress, and the World of Ice and Fire, out and out suggesting that the High Towers might descend from seafaring traders that got there before the first men. And so do the Danes. Obviously, the Danes have tons of clues about descending from the Dragon Lords from the Shadow, the Great Empire of the Dawn. I think those are the same people.
Mm-hmm.
So all that sort of points to the High Tower as being kind of interesting. And Old Town is definitely coming to the fore in the story. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that's something that I really hadn't considered because, yeah, we are in Old Town and, some pretty major events are getting ready, I think, to go down in Old Town with Sam and Pate. And, that key is definitely going to come into play. So, yeah, that's interesting. I'll definitely have to look into that more because that's something that I really haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. Very interesting to hear about.
It says that he hasn't come down in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the quote from Samwell chapter in The Feast for Crows. The High Tower must be doing something. And this is after he's heard about like the Ironborn raiding near Old Town. And he says, the High Tower must be doing something. To be sure, Lord Leighton's locked atop his tower with the Mad Maid, consulting books of spells. Might be he'll raise an army from the deeps. Or not. Baylor's building galleys. Gunther has charge of the harbor. And then he goes on and talks about their preparations, their war preparations. But that little bit was like, oh yeah, he's up there consulting the book of spells where he hasn't come down for 10 years and maybe he'll raise an army from the deeps. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
He's going to raise the deep ones.
Totally.
Because the deep ones built the thing, the black base, according to Master Theon. And he's gonna raise he's gonna blow that horn. He's gonna blow a horn that calls the deep ones, and they're gonna come with the krakens. And they're gonna fight the others, and that's what's happening.
And there's also that line about you can see the wall from atop the High Tower, which implies like magical sight, kind of.
Uh-huh.
And if you think about like Sauron,
yes, that's exactly what I thought about
with the Palantir. You could almost imagine, and Aaron P in the chat suggests that Lord Leighton has a glass candle up there.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. Like if you live atop a tower and you never come down,
he's in Old Town.
Makes more sense if he's got a glass candle, and like that's how he stays in touch with everything.
Of course, that is absolutely brilliant. I love it. I'm gonna have to fucking do some research in that and talk about it some more. That's a really cool.
Shout out to Aaron P.
Yeah,
nice one.
That was a very good one. Very much like it. Wait. Not sure if Lucifer is reading my thoughts or if I'm reading his thoughts, but I am certain it is sci-fi confirmed. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Did you say something about it being sci-fi?
I'm not really sure. No, I mean, I think I made my thoughts pretty clear about that.
Yeah. Neither of us think that it's sci-fi.
Oh, maybe he's saying that me reading his thoughts is sci-fi.
Oh.
See,
Okay.
David Hunter's he's subtle, man. He makes you think. So he was just that one went over our heads.
Yeah. You're smarter than me, dude. Stop toying with me with your superior intellect. So, we'll go on for a few more minutes, guys. We're going to take some more questions. So, if you've got some questions, put them in the chat now. And we will see. We'll try and answer a few more before we close this down for today. But like I said, leave a like if you've been enjoying this. Subscribe. Check out my Patreon for new content. Well, not free content, but you can get it for like $1. You can totally donate $1 a month to my Patreon, and I'm posting like 2 exclusive videos a month. And these are good videos. These are well edited videos. I just did one on like Cthulhu. Well, not Cthulhu, but Lovecraft and his influence on George R. R. Martin, and how like a lot of stuff relates. That's really cool. That's up there, along with over an hour of other stuff that you can totally watch. Song of Ice and Fire, other stuff, Game of Thrones. Talk about all of it. So check out my Patreon. And also follow me on Twitter. I never say that, but I'm always tweeting. So follow me on Twitter if you want. And don't forget to check out LML stuff too.
Yeah, let me tease everybody with a little something to make you want to come over and check out my series, okay? So the Kingsguard and the others are described in exactly the same terms. Okay, they're both described as white shadows. They're both describing as having snow white or icy armor. They're both described as ghosts in the moonlight. And they're both described, the Kingsguard are called white swords, and the others are described as milky white and sword slim. And it goes on and on and on. But basically, every description of the Kingsguard is a description that also fits the others. And this is something that I've found that no one else has found, okay? And there's a very specific reason that George has created this parallel, basically because the others are off page. You don't get to see the others very much. So he creates a symbolic proxy for the others in the Kingsguard. And then when he has the Kingsguard do things in certain scenes, it's actually telling us information about the others. And so that is going to be something I will be studying in the Moons of Ice and Fire series that's starting right now. So if you've never checked out my podcast, go on over to YouTube, Lucifer Means Lightbringer channel, and check out the first video, watch a couple episodes, get the feel for what we're talking about, and then you can catch up with the new series and join in the chat. And I'll be doing a live stream Q&A probably in like a week and a half after I put out the new episode this weekend. So send in your questions and then join me on the live stream and we'll talk about it. So there you go.
Absolutely. So let's see what questions are in the chat. I was doing stupid shit while you were talking and not looking for questions. Okay. I think George himself implies that it is sci-fi because he bases geography, geology, magic events, dragons only on what existed in real life, which he pointed out. Well, it's grounded in reality, but I think there's far more to it than that. I think there is an element that is far beyond reality. I know what you're talking about. Like, he gave the dragons, like 2 legs and wings because, that's how animals really exist. There's no animal with like 4 legs and wings. So he wanted to keep it realistic in that sense. And, the geography is kind of realistic, but then look at the seasons, which is not realistic at all. I mean, like, the seasons are like 10-year winter. That doesn't happen in the real world. So, some is fantasy. Some
Yeah, so I think what we're having in terms confusion. So what he's talking about is rational and irrational. That's not the same thing as fantasy versus science fiction. Like, the magic is allowed to make sense, and it's still magic. Like, we're told only death can pay for life. We don't know exactly how that works, but we know that Dany sacrificed basically Drogo, her son, and Miri Maz-Dor in the process of that ceremony. And we don't know how many deaths pay for how many dragons or how that fucking works or anything, but we know as a general principle that death pays for life.
Yeah.
And so magic is consistent. And like I said, he's also basing the magic on natural properties. Like obsidian, the reason why George thinks about it as containing a fire magic power is because it's literally cooled magma. So it makes sense to think that it's got fire magic frozen into it. But that doesn't make it science fiction. Just because it's like comprehensible or rational in some sense, it doesn't mean that it's science fiction. So it's just a little bit of a semantics debate, but it's important to define the terms when you're trying to talk about this.
Yeah, and that kind of answers Shot's question: why do people care so much about genre fitting? Well, when you want to bring up, well, this is really us just responding to someone else's assertion, like the burden of proof is on the person that's making these claims, and the burden of proof has not been met, so we reject it. It's not just us being obsessed with like what genre is this. You're making a positive claim, and you have not met the burden of proof, and that's the point. That is the point. Do you think that George R. Martin seriously puts so much meaning into every word, or is there just tons of coincidences? It's truly hard to believe the genius of this man. I think there is meaning, like that's why it takes so long. Like George R. Martin has said that he will write an entire page and then look at it and delete the whole thing and rewrite the whole thing because he just can't stand that. Like, he rewrites sentences over and over again. He's like, I don't like the way it sounds that time. I'm going to rewrite it again. I don't like the way that looks. I'm going to rewrite it again. So yeah, I do think that he's like putting detail into every sentence and every word and making sure that this is exactly what needs to be here at this time. I do. Yep.
Yeah, I think my opinion is well known on that topic. I mean, there's obviously like not every single thing that I point at and say, oh, this has a double meaning is right. Like I'm sure some of those things were just coincidences that sort of lined up with a greater pattern. And I was like, oh yeah, that's something. But for the most part, no, I don't think anyone should underestimate George Martin. He's very intentional with his phrasing, and he uses certain key phrases and key words, like say, alive with light. There's a reason why there's only 4 or 5 things in the book that are described as alive with light. And that's a specific phrase that has meaning inside of a Song of Ice and Fire. And if he describes something as alive with light, then that's not a coincidence. Like that's intentional, in my opinion.
I agree. Shot says, and he gave me a super chat. Thank you so much. He says, Dunstanbury, bro, why is that not on the map? What? Dunstanbury. It's not on the map? What do you mean it's not? It's right. It's on this map. It's on this map, right? Oh, I guess it's not. Is it not marked on, like, I mean, I guess it's just, I mean, it's a castle, so it's like, yeah. Let me see if I can find another map. I don't see it specifically being marked. I don't know. I guess it's just an oversight. It's not like a super important castle, really. I mean, who lived there? It was what's the woman? The woman. It was the seat of House Peak, right? Or am I reading that wrong? It's not, but the point is, it's not an important castle, I don't think. So I guess it's just kind of an oversight that it's left off. Yeah, but yeah. But guys, I think it's about time. Well, what are you gonna say?
There's a couple more good questions that flew by.
Okay, sure.
And I want to grab. So what are your thoughts? Sonny Frank asks, what are your thoughts on dead things in the water at Hardhome?
Okay. Well, it sounds to me like what it is, dead things in the water. Like, I think White Walkers in the water, probably. Or not White Walkers, but the others coming out of the water. That's what it sounds like. Or dead bodies in the water.
Is it like whites that are walking around at the bottom of the lake or the river or something? Or is it like reanimated sea creatures or fucking mermaids and shit?
I did think that too, like dead, because he says dead things. So what does that mean? That implies that it's maybe non-human. That'd be interesting. I think what kind of animals could live. I'm not too familiar with like sea creatures and where they live. It'd be cold up there, right? So it'd be like the Arctic Ocean or something. What kind of animals live in those cold waters? Like whales? Whales can swim? I don't fucking know. I have no idea. But I like the idea of dead sea creatures coming out of the water and fighting for the others. I think that's really cool. Really freaking cool. I've never seen anything like that in anything. Like sea creatures, like dead sea creatures coming out of the fucking water. So that, I think, is like something really super original. I like that. It's really cool. Like a dead merling. You said you had another question that you found?
Yeah, let's see. What was the other one?
Oh, and did you answer the dead things in the water question?
Well, I'm not really sure. I just think it's like one of the creepiest lines in the entire series.
Yeah. Definitely leaves an impression. It stands out.
Yeah, it just makes you wonder. Because we're told about those black-tailed mermaids of the Shivering Sea.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like a whited mermaid or something.
Uh-huh. Those are the bad mermaids. The good mermaids don't hang out with those mermaids.
Let's see here. No, I guess I think that was the main question I wanted to go back for.
Okay. Well, guys, I guess the stream is coming to an end. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Go check out LML's stuff. Like I said, Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, obviously. You're watching this on YouTube right now. Yeah. So, LML, you want to say your farewells to the people?
Thanks for coming, everyone. We had a very nice crowd today. It's funny how, like, when we're off show season, less trolls for some reason. It's like
Yeah.
a little better quality of questions, and I'm not saying anything, but I just happened to notice that.
The trolls
But thanks for the
vanish.
great. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, lots of great questions today. So thanks everybody for coming. And LuciferMeansLightbringer.com for all of my claptrap.
Live streams every Thursday, guys. Every Thursday at 3:30. You can expect live streams on this channel. And, I have Lucifer on here a lot. And then I have other channels on, too. Like, I've had Order of the Green Hand. I've had a few other channels on. Like, I've had Secrets of the Citadel and Gray Area on. And, it's fun. It's fun. We all get together when we just have, like, nerd chats. So, thanks, everyone, for watching. Peace out. And I'll talk to you guys. See you next week.
So they can't hear us, or they can. Can I start saying horrible things about people, or is that not safe? Just,
Fuck people. People suck. I don't like that one guy either. He's a piece of shit.
God damn that dude.
Yeah.
Who's first?
He's fucking weird.